secrets of the day. Locked on to Eddie, they whispered his name. Caught in a tempest, a life gone insane. Down in the dark, where the sailor path runs, a set of keys hit the dirt under disappearing suns. A house key, a car key, lost in the rush. But the state swept it up like a hand in the crush. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains,
I like these.
but the truth won't die.
These Benny better.
Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. Unseal the notes, expose all the blocks. Rayleigh trapped Eddie in a manufactured box. 30 years of hidden facts buried in the track. It is time to give Eddie O'Brien his freedom back. Unseal the box, break down the lock. Let the truth ring louder than the courthouse clock. 3 decades of silence, a cold prison shell. Refuse to lie, they cast a wicked spell. No remorse in their eyes, they judge from the booth. But Eddie stands tall, anchored in truth. Summer is opening, the science is real. The manufactured box begins to peel. Voices collide as hope takes its stand. With every heartbeat echoes a drowning band. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise The drums roll thunder through the halls of despair. With strings and brass, they unite in the air. A symphony of chaos reflects in the night. The fight for Eddie grows bigger, takes flight. Beneath boundless skies, the walls start to shake. Each note of resistance, a wave in the wake. A revolution of honesty will cut through the lies. As the world turns its gaze, a new dawn will rise. So gather the voices who waited too long for Eddie O'Brien. We'll sing out strong. His freedom's a fire, lighting up the gloom. As the massive, triumphant clock brings truth to the room.
Put my meta glasses on. What the? What am I hearing now? All right, what's up, everybody? Let me get this shit stopped. You know, Mike, you got horrible language, Michael.
Yes. Don't like it.
My language is horrible. She said I got a shitty mouth.
Yeah, but you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're trying to work on that. She said I got language like I'm a trucker.
You're like a sailor.
I am a trucker. What is going on, everybody, man? What's that? I got my meta glasses on. Check these out.
That's right.
But I don't like them. Because you know what? I don't need these in the house. I need something I can see with. I think the ultimate eye test is when you go on Burger King or McDonald's and you look at the menu, and if it's blurry, you need glasses. If it's blurry, you need glasses. What's going on, everybody? Took yesterday off. Well needed break. All right, that wasn't working. So, but all right, man, here we go, man. Before we get started, you already know, smash that like button, all that good stuff. Subscribe. Can't get out of that 750 mark, trying to get to at least 1,000, but we're stuck at that 750, but I don't care. I mean, it don't matter to me because y'all support me. So, we don't need, 15, 16,000, subs. I'm happy with the ones we have. Shout out to Robert, man. How you feeling, my man? Robert, man. Salute to Robert, man. Everyone, we all keep Robert in our prayers, Smash that like button like it owes you restitution, hit the membership, settle up, appreciate everybody. We're not just talking, we ain't testifying either. It's okay. We appreciate that. Good morning to everybody. Everybody loves to scream justice until justice starts poking them back. Till justice starts asking them questions. Everybody wants the truth until that truth starts pointing fingers. Don't you love that? But when you mix in high stakes humans, a courtroom full of pressure, politicians that are trying to make it to the next level, well, that's when the cracks. Well, good for you, Robert. I'm glad you're feeling real good now. Good for you. Salute to you, bro. Salute to you, and you're definitely in our prayers. Shout out to Denise Noel 43. Part of the justice system that I think a lot of folks pretend doesn't exist is juror misconduct. How many times do you think that happens? The whispers. Imagine the side conversations. You really think a juror goes home and just, don't say nothing about the case or don't even look shit up online? I mean, if I was a juror, if I was in that Karen Reed shit, like I swear, all them people, I guarantee they were going home watching court TV. How can you not? You know what I mean? We're not supposed to do that. Yeah, we ain't supposed to do a lot of things. Don't worry about it. Just put the internet on. How many jurors do shit like that? The I know somebody or who knows somebody energy. The shit that could flip a verdict. She's in the other room, so I can swear now. So, ruin a life or expose a corrupt system that was already limping. Because this Eddie O'Brien, case, we keep peeling back layers on top of layers. I want to see documents, court paperwork. I don't want to see, I want to see news articles. That's just someone else's opinion of what happened. We got enough of that for months. listening to people's opinion about this, you know? And then we got to listen to people kissing, you know, Adi's ass. You know, like what kind of rubs me like up and down sideways is how can you be free Eddie and then over there patting Adi on the back? A guy that wishes nothing but the worst for Eddie. A guy that says Eddie should rot in prison for the rest of his natural life. But that's another subject. You know, but if you just get in here, you know, if you're over on Twitter, get your ass over here on YouTube. Really appreciate it. The Twitter stream will be going off soon. You know, so if you're on Twitter, come over here, watch it on YouTube. Really appreciate that for the 4 people over there. The 4, oh, 1 just left, so maybe they're coming over to YouTube. You know, share the stream. Share the stream. I really appreciate that. That's the least y'all can do. Is hit that share button, hit that like button. This weekend we might have JoJo might be in the house. Shout out to Mama OBrien. Aunt Jerry, what's going on? Juror Misconduct, man. This is one of these episodes, you know, that I've been waiting to do. You know, because I think it hits at the core or the center of what I've seen for years. You know, you watch a lot of people get chewed up by the justice system, you know, and a justice system that swears it's neutral, you know, and a juror, my God, man, a juror, man. I mean, how can you even anything that I don't know? I just have very, very little faith in a jury system. But what else is there? What other type of system is there? The Amatol test system. I think if you had the Amatol system, you might have a very high conviction rate. But jury misconduct, man, ain't always dramatic. You know, it's not always someone sneaking the phone into deliberations or Googling evidence like they're cramming for finals. You got put in a cell for yelling in the courtroom. I got put in the cell. It wasn't for yelling in the courtroom, though. Just a little humor. But sometimes it's just subtle. A comment, someone might post something, somebody, but I mean, if I was a juror and it was a big trial, like the Karen Reed trial, I mean, how could you not go home? I mean, back when Eddie O'Brien was on trial, there really wasn't, you had to wait till the following day to read all the shit talking that the reporters did. You know, it wasn't like instantly, it wasn't like bang, as it's happening, updates are being thrown out there. You're seeing what's going on. I mean, Trisha witnessed Trisha and Ed, you know, they witnessed the trial back in 96. You know, it's not like now, like hopefully when Eddie gets a new trial now, you know, it'll be a totally different atmosphere. But some jurors who walk in with their mind made up before the first witness even cleared their throat. A lot of times you put on court TV and you hear the case, you hear the situation going on, and you already kind of have your mind made up. Oh, if you need some free Eddie flyers, contact Denise Noel 43, for your store or something. We gotta make some have some yard signs printed up. But sometimes a juror, and even, when we put on court TV, the Casey Anthony trial, everyone's seen that trial and looked at Casey Anthony. And just because of the crime she was accused of, everybody was like, that bitch is guilty. But when you look at the evidence, now I was saying as that trial was going on, I don't think they have enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And everybody was like, F you, F you, F you. How could you side with her? I'm not siding with her. I'm just saying I don't think they have enough for reasonable doubt. And then Casey Anthony gets off for that crime. The Aaron Hernandez trial, I thought that the first trial he would have got off and convicted on the second, but when a juror steps out of line, it's not small. It's not a like, whoops, am I bad? It's an earthquake, a constitutional earthquake, really. But the moment a juror stops being neutral, the defendant stops getting a fair trial. And once that happened, everything that comes after that is contaminated. Now, what if a juror comes into a trial that's not already is not neutral? So is that entire case contaminated? What really nobody wants to say out loud, and let me keep it real, right? Juror misconduct is often a symptom. It happens in every case, right? It's the system's refusal to screen properly. They might be able to fix it. It's the pressure to rush some trials. The assumption that everybody, the assumption every day, people can magically turn off their bias like a light switch. We can't do that. We wish we could turn our bias off like a light switch. And I don't think anybody can say that they can. Judges are biased. They say they are not, but they're people. People are biased. And when misconduct happens, they just act surprised. I mean, if we want justice to mean something, we can't just focus on the verdict, right? We have to look at the process, how it's done, because a verdict built on misconduct, is kind of like a house built with wet cardboard. It's good for a minute, but it's going to collapse the second a storm comes through. I mean, in juror, you got to rethink everything. You thought you knew. You come out of some cases, maybe you don't know if you made the right this decision. Where was it now? In the Eddie O'Brien trial, there was misconduct before it even began. There's no such thing as being unbiased and honest. But don't forget, if you are honest and unbiased, hit that like button. Hit that sub button. And share this with somebody who swears the system never gets it wrong. We're going to dive into this. You see the document on the screen. So, basically, should I read this first? Eddie's former attorney, Maria Curtatone, received a call from an unidentified man stating that a juror, Mike M., juror 66 from Eddie's trial, juror is a friend and works with Paul Downing Sr. Paul Downing Sr. name was read off at jury impanelment at one of the names for potential jurors to notify the judge if they happen to know. Hang on, where's my paper? There it is. Or are related to any one of them. Mike M., juror 66, didn't notify the judge that he was friends with and worked with Paul Downing Sr. So an unidentified man ends up calling the attorney after the 2020 episode was on, right? He said that juror 66, right, his name was Mike M., was friends with Paul Downing Sr., the victim's ex-husband, right? Paul Downing Sr.'s name was read during jury selection as someone jurors must disclose if they knew. Mike M. never disclosed that he knew Paul Downing Sr., right? The caller said that he was afraid to come forward. Now let's read the document. At 4:45 p.m., the investigator telephoned and spoke with attorney Maria Curtatone, who stated that after the conclusion of the Eddie O'Brien trial, and on the Monday following, the television program 2020, which examined the trial and verdict, she had received a telephone call from an unidentified male. The male told her that Mike M., who was interviewed on 2020, is a friend to and works with Paul Downing Sr., the ex-husband of the victim, Janet Downing. The unidentified male further stated that he was afraid to come forward. He said that he frequently sees Mike M. and Paul Downing Sr. together in the office. He added that his child attends the same school as one of the O'Brien's children, St. Clemens. I wonder if the O'Briens were able to nail down who this was. I mean, they must. He said that he has always wanted to give this information to Patricia O'Brien, but he has been too afraid to come forward. Catch Patricia on her bad day. He said, I was afraid. The same male told attorney Curtatone that Paul Downing Sr. had on several occasions said that he was still in love with Janet Downing. Now, I don't know about you, but there's a motive right there. So the caller claims he was afraid to come forward. He often saw Mike M. and Paul Downing Sr. together at work. He said his child attended the same school as one of the O'Brien siblings, and he wanted to tell Eddie's mother, but he was afraid. He said Paul Downing Sr. was still in love with the victim. Are we being factual? He said Paul Downing Sr. was still in love with the victim. And somebody said that wasn't true. You know, Juror 6 admitted that he had been prosecuted before, but said it wouldn't affect his fairness. He admitted he saw news coverage when the case first happened, and he said he remembered the fight about moving the case from juvenile court to adult court. He insisted none of this would affect his impartial to be impartial. Absolutely, man. Neither the prosecution nor defense objected to keeping him. My wife helped me find this and put this all together. She's great at that. The unidentified male stated that he was afraid to come forward. He said that he frequently sees Mike and Paul Downing together in the office. And the same male told the attorney that Paul Downing Sr. had on several occasions said that he was still in love with Janet Downing. I mean, imagine that, you know, stepping into the place where justice gets nervous, right? You go in that courtroom, man, that's a nervous place to be. But when a juror sits in that box with a secret, not a small secret, something that ties him directly to the victim's family, that's not a rumor anymore. This is a phone call made after the cameras stopped rolling from a man too scared to come forward. But now that Eddie, I think this was after the verdict. So now that Eddie was found guilty, now he's like, I'm too guilty. I feel too guilty now. I have to come forward. Well, it's a little late. You should have came forward before the jury reached a verdict. So let's start with, you know what, before we get into that, here, let's take a quick break. And we'll come right back and we'll get right into the dirty ass juror.
shuffle where justice dies. America, can you see? Can you open the door to the voices unheard? Fighting for more. Every single expert, they knew the facts. Nonviolent heart, it's not an act. He was meant for healing, not this dark fate. But the court turned blind and sealed up the gate. Eddie's story is a lesson, not just for today. A reminder to listen, to show a better way. When the voices of the many are ignored with disdain, we've lost the battle and it's all in vain. Let the echoes of the experts ring loud and clear. For every Eddie standing there, we cannot disappear.
And we back. We back.
Not promote or promotion any illegal activities. All content provided by this channel is meant only for educational purpose only.
So let's go over what we already discussed. So after the 2020 interview, after the verdict, one of the attorneys gets a phone call from a man, Mike M. He said that he works with Paul Sr. and the Juror 66, or Juror 66 is Mike M. Yeah. So Juror 66, he knew Paul Sr. So he says that the Juror 66 wasn't just some random citizen pulled off the street. He was friends with Paul Downing Sr., the victim's ex-husband, and not just friends, co-workers. They seemed to know each other very well. And here's the kicker, right? Paul Downing Sr.'s name was read during jury selection for the impanelment. And this guy knew him. He was supposed to speak up, but Mike M. said nothing at all. The caller says that he's been wanting to tell Eddie's mother for years. Imagine that long. He's been wanting to tell Eddie's mother, but he was afraid. He was afraid of the retaliation, of being dragged into this big mess that he called it, afraid of the system. Do we blame him? I mean, he should have came forward, absolutely. But what was the atmosphere back in Somerville back in 1995? Afraid, retaliation, afraid of the system. He even mentioned how his kids went to school with Eddie's siblings. I mean, this isn't some distant observer, someone close enough to see the dynamics, close enough to see the connections, close enough to fear what the consequences would be. This isn't just somebody that was like that lived on the other side of the state. He must have been close enough to know what was going on. And then he gets into the love angle. You know, he drops another bomb that Paul Downing Sr. was still very much in love with his ex-wife, Janet. Now, imagine being a juror, right, sitting in judgment of a boy accused of doing this to a woman that your friend still loved, right? So you never disclosed that connection. That's not a small oversight. That's definitely a conflict of interest, you know, like blowing up. What do? Do you say, oh, you know, my friend still loves this lady and this guy is accused of doing this to her? So are you going to go in there? You're going to be biased? Absolutely. You're going to be objective? No, you're going to go in there and right off the jump, conviction, conviction, conviction. So now the judge is questioning, if you see the document on the screen, you know, we'll get into it. He's going to question Juror 66. He's going to admit he was prosecuted before. He's going to admit he saw news coverage. He remembers the fight about moving the case to adult court. And they're going to ask him if it affects his fairness. And he says no every time, every question. The prosecution, oh, no objection. The defense, no objections. Then the one thing he didn't admit, the one thing that mattered probably more than anything else, was the relationship he had with the victim's ex-husband. You know, the judge asks, is there anyone here that does not understand either of those legal principles or who does not agree with either of the legal principles? And then he goes on, I have a list of witnesses I am going to call your attention to. I'm going to call your attention the names of a number of people. I mean, there's about 130 names. I want you to listen closely to these names because the reason for it is to determine whether or not any of you know any of these people in any way related to any of these people. You may hear from these people, anything. Then he starts going over, you know, police officers that are investigating the case. You know, Charles Firmino, you know, Sergeant James Stanford, you know, all the detectives, all the officers he starts naming, guys from the state police, Lieutenant O'Hara, you know, Sergeant Conley. He goes all the way down the list. And any people associated with the Mass State Police. You know, he continues, you know, Mary McGilvery, the chemist, the doctors, people from the hospital, people that drove the ambulance, people from Peabody Police Department, let's see, more people from the ambulance. And then we get to Eddie O'Brien Sr., John Fitzpatrick, Jeannie O'Brien, Joseph Dion, Seth Dion, Carrie Ann Downing, Frank Golden, Christopher Ford, Ryan Downing, Paul Downing, Christine Belcher, Eric McConnell, Jennifer Carroll, Marco Abreu, Michelle Cameron, Raquel Vega, Walter Golden, Jack Arnold, and he's getting to it. Paul Downing Sr. Then Court Officer Juror 66. All right, sir, you raised your hand to what question? So 66 had a question, so he raised his hand. He said he had contact with the district attorney's office. What did you do? You had contact with the DA's office? Well, I was prosecuted for a DUI in 95, yeah, in this county. Were you convicted? As a result of that, does that somewhat affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case for either the defendant or the district attorney? Not at all. So you don't hold any animus. No. Against the government because of your conviction? No. Is there anything else you raised your hand to? No. All right. Let me ask you these additional questions. Have you had any exposure of any kind to the news media, TV, radio, or newspaper? Answer: some. Keep your voice up, please. And when is the first time you remember any exposure of any of that? When it happened, I saw it on the news. Have you seen anything or heard anything about it in the news media since that time? The only thing that I remember was they were trying to get the case from juvenile to the regular court. So you recall something about that they were trying to do that. Anything else that you remember? No. Have you heard about it recently? No. But whether it was you were exposed to as you relate to us, is that going to in any way affect your ability to be fair and impartial trying this case? Answer: no. Well, let me further ask you these questions. At the time of that incident in this case, the defendant was 15 years old. He is now 17 and being tried in this court as an adult. Do those facts in any way affect your ability to be a fair and impartial juror in this case? I mean, no is the only answer that you're going to, unless you don't want to be on the case, right? Does the fact that the district attorney, Thomas Riley himself, is handling this case and prosecuting this case in any way affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? No. And finally, do you have any bias or prejudice towards the investigation procedures or law enforcement officials, including the collection of analysis of evidence that would in any way affect your ability to be fair or impartial juror in this case? No. The court, I find he stands indifferent. Mr. Riley, Commonwealth is content with this juror. Mr. George, may I have a moment, Your Honor? Yes. The defendant is content, Your Honor. All right. You raise your hand to what question? So here's the question we're left with, right? How can a system claim fairness when a juror sits in silence about a connection that deep? I mean, stuff like this is what, the foundation of this trial already starting to crack. But how is anybody to know unless the juror comes forward himself and says something? But maybe this guy should have came forward a lot sooner instead of waiting until the trial was over. And sometimes in the courtroom, the truth is not just walking in. You know, it ends up calling you with a shaky voice from a blocked number. I mean, and a secret like this should stop a verdict in its tracks, but does it? So to rehash this, a man terrified makes an anonymous call, calls one of O'Brien's, Eddie's former attorneys after the 2020 episode aired, and he's saying, Juror 6 was friends with the victim's ex-husband, a man whose name was read during jury selection, a man the juror never admitted knowing. And that, my friend, is where this whole case starts to smell like a cover-up. I mean, his phone call could have changed everything. But what do you do if you're the attorney? Someone calls you, they don't want to give their name, they're scared. Saying how he works for Paul. He works for the guy, him and Paul Downing Sr., the victim's ex-husband, says that multiple times, not strangers, not acquaintances, but they were friends. And when the judge reads Paul Downing Sr.'s name during jury selection, this juror sat there like he never heard it a day in his life. That's not a mistake, friends. That's a choice. Why was he afraid to come forward? He said he wanted to tell Eddie's mother, but why was he afraid? What retaliation? He was afraid of being dragged into a red rum case, afraid because his kids went to school with one of Eddie's siblings. I mean, this wasn't just some random guy with a rumor. It was someone close enough to see that there was Somerville connections and close enough to fear the consequences. Another thing that stuck out, he drops the bomb that changes the temperature of the entire room. Now imagine this, you're a juror. You're friends with a man who still loved the victim. You're sitting in judgment of the boy accused of this crime against her, and you don't disclose that. If that ain't a conflict of interest, what is? I mean, he admitted he was prosecuted before. I had no problem doing that. He said he saw the news coverage, right? He remembers they want to move the case around. But when asked if any of that affected his fairness, he said no, 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 every single time. And I don't think this is about a juror. I think it's about a system that don't vet the jurors good enough. And how does the court fix that? So this will be something else that's going to be in the Rule 30 motion. Or it should be anyway. I mean, I wonder how many things there are that the system wouldn't want regular John Q. public to know. Because this isn't just about one juror or one man or one seat in the jury box. This is about a system that screens jurors like it's checking ID cards at BJ's. A quick glance. They barely look at the picture. They wave you through like, yep, go ahead, buddy. You good. And that's the problem, right? No real questions. No effort to find out who these people are before we hand them somebody's life. Because when this misconduct pops up later, everybody acts brand new. Like, oh my God, how could this happen? Like the system didn't set the table, light the candles, and invite the chaos to dinner. And the ones that pretend they don't hear what we're saying, when you don't ask real questions, you don't get real answers. And when you don't screen for bias, you don't catch bias. And when you treat jury selection like a speed dating event, you end up with people who should have never been on that jury making decisions that changed a child's life forever. And then when the truth finally leaks out, when somebody finally admits that they knew a witness or a victim or a family member, the system clutches its pearls like it wasn't the one who let them in the door. I mean, I don't think this is by accident. It's not a pattern, a habit, a culture good enough in places where good enough ruins lives. So then when this shit pops up later, they act surprised. They want to be confused. Like the system wasn't asleep at the wheel. I mean, the truth is simple. But if you don't look for the truth, you won't find it. You know? You have to look for it. You have to see it coming. There's got to be better ways. I mean, what we just talked about, right? What we just walked through, that wasn't a mistake. That was a freaking coincidence. You know what I mean? That was a crack in the foundation. And that foundation, man, was the trial that decided a child's life. This dude sat in that box and told the court that he could be fair. He said, I don't got no bias. He said, I don't have no bias. He said he had no connections that would affect his judgment. But outside that courtroom, but if nobody's admitting that they know the Downing names, you know, what do you do about that? If no one admits that they know Paul Downing Sr., Paul Downing Jr., Ryan Downing, Carrie Ann Downing, Adi Ortiz, Carol Ortiz, and all of them, But imagine that this is a juror, right? And outside the courtroom, people will see this guy with the victim's ex-husband, working with him, knowing him, being close enough that an anonymous caller was afraid to come forward and say the truth out loud. And that right there, that silence, that failure to disclose, is that why Rule 30 exists? This is just one small part of the Rule 30. I mean, Rule 30 is the emergency brake that the system has in place. It's the law's way of saying, listen, if there's something that wasn't fair, Eddie, if something that we did wasn't honest, if something wasn't right, then we have to go back and fix it. And we wish it was that easy. We hope it's going to be that easy. We hope it was going to be that easy, right? I mean, a juror hiding a relationship with someone tied to the victim. This juror watched the news, remembered the political fight, was prosecuted by the same office, and none of it even mattered. That's not no small issue. That's some bull crap. That's a constitutional violation wearing a friggin' name tag, right? So when people ask, why is Eddie filing a Rule 30 motion? Really? Why? Reopen a case this old? What? Why dig up the past? Excuse me? Because the past was never told the first time around. Because the juror's silence is not harmless, right? A hidden connection is not irrelevant. And a child's life was decided by people who didn't tell the truth. So the truth finally needs to come out, even all this time later. The law has an obligation to listen. Do they listen? Hell no. Will they listen? I hope so. So now Eddie has this fight. He's going to step into this Rule 30. He's not asking for a favor. He's not asking for sympathy. He's asking for what every person in this country is promised. A fair trial, judged by people who walked in their clean hands and a clean conscience. And if you can't do that, don't even show up for jury duty. But that didn't happen, did it? Then the court has a jury, not an option. You know how some fools say you got options. You got options to open that door back up. Because justice delayed, it hurts. But justice denied, that shit is just unacceptable. That is unacceptable. All right, we'll be right back with another segment right after this. Give me a minute.
so torn. They said it was fear, reopening the doors, filled with whispers behind closed floors. A white boy convicted made it look fair, but in the shadow of justice, the truth laid bare. Eddie was a name, but just a pawn in the game, sacrificed and railroaded. Nothing felt the same. Oh, just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. Barnum was under pressure, he folded like glass. The DA showboating, just trying to amass. The system wanted justice, but justice was blind, changing the laws, leaving truth far behind. Remove the judge who dared to be just. Eddie was demonized in the world's cruel thrust. Size mattered not when politics run deep. From day one he fought, but all they did was sweep. Oh, just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. And those inside knew the story was wrong. We could have done better, sang the old wrong song. Experts pressure to twist the truth, arm in the court of despair. There was no charm, he never stood a chance. From the very start, a tragic confession, a broken heart. Watch Eddie's face when the world turned cold. An innocent spirit caught in a tale retold. The system failed him, that much is clear. A boy from Somerville, lost in his fear. Yet in the ashes, his story remains of the justice betrayed and the bitter pains. Through the lens of history, we sing his plight. Remember the boy who stood up to the night. Just a boy from Somerville. They played with his life as if it was a thrill. Politics and pressure, shadows at play, innocent hearts lost in this twisted ballet. So let's tell his story, raise voices, unite. For every Eddie, let's stand up and fight. Just a boy from Somerville, forever we'll stand in the hearts of the people. His truth in our hands.
And like that, we back. We back. Let me put what I had up on the screen. Oh, I know what. I'll get it figured out sometime today. But what I'm talking about now, oh, this is why. Now let's see. All right, we'll get it. We'll get it. There it is. All right, it took me a little bit to get that. My bad. My bad. I think this document, I don't think anybody in power, even 30 years later, I don't think they wanted anybody to see, you know. But when the Commonwealth was standing in that courtroom pointing fingers at Eddie O'Brien, you know, you had a laboratory in Maryland that was running DNA tests that told a very different story. But after the trial on July 25th in 97, you know, after the conviction, after Eddie's fate was already sealed, Selmark Diagnostic sends a report to the Mass State Police Crime Lab, a report that said something that the jury never heard. I'm going to read you just one line from the report, right? That changes everything. The data indicates that DNA from more than one individual was obtained. The primary source of the DNA is female. A secondary source is male. And then the part that should have stopped the trial in its tracks. Eddie O'Brien is excluded as the primary source of the DNA obtained. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, really, what do you think of what I have just read? I mean, that should really, there shouldn't be any more doubt in anyone's mind. The data indicates that DNA from more than one person was obtained. The primary source of the DNA is female, and a secondary is male. And it goes on to say that Edward O'Brien is excluded as the primary source of the DNA. I mean, that should just jump off the page. They should have took DNA from everybody. But they didn't care. They didn't give a shit. So let's break that down, you know, for the stubborn people, that's only 70%. You know, break down for the people in the back that still think that they can't get past the jumping story. But the DNA under the victim's fingernails, the DNA on the thread from the metal piece of the third stair, like, what are they doing at that courthouse back in the friggin' day? God forbid, I'm glad I never had to go to court there. Oh my goodness. Because for this damn case to get convicted, That DNA should have been the centerpiece of the prosecution's case, and it wasn't Eddie's. Not the primary, not the dominant profile, not the DNA that matched the struggle, right? But the jury never heard of it. Not one word, not one sentence, not one hint that the science contradicted the story that the state was selling. This kid got railroaded. So now the question actually becomes, right, why was this report filed after the trial? Why wasn't this evidence presented? And what happens when something like this is reported after the trial? You sit for another 30 freaking years? So a 15-year-old child gets convicted. Oh, he was 17. Yeah, he was 15 when you put him in. So all that other stuff don't matter. A 15-year-old child gets convicted while a document sat in a file saying that DNA didn't match him. This isn't a clerical error. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a crime. I mean, this shit was evidence. It was scientific, documented evidence. An expert reviewed the evidence. It was never put in front of the people deciding Eddie's life, the jury. It was never put in front of the people deciding his life. And that right there is why we're here 30 years later, talking about why the Rule 30 exists. That's why that this case is far from over, because justice don't end with a verdict, right? It ends with the truth. But we have the report that they tried to bury. You know, they tried to bury the truth. And what about the fingernail evidence, the chain of custody issues? You know, DNA they didn't want the jury to see. But those clippings, what was the right hand, the left hand, they were supposed to tell the story of the struggle. They were supposed to show who she fought with, who bounced her head off every wall in that house. Who did she scratch? Who did she try to stop? And when Selmach ran those tests, the results were clear. DNA from more than one person. The primary source was female. The secondary was a man. And Eddie O'Brien was excluded as the primary source. So tell me how he's guilty again. Remind me. That weirdo Adi, you know, like all his stupid bullshit. All the lies and the lies on top of the lies. Exactly. They didn't care the DNA didn't match Eddie. They didn't give a shit. If the victim's own DNA was the dominant profile and Eddie's wasn't the match, then whose male DNA was mixed in? Paul Jr., Adi, Paul Sr., Ryan? Who? I would put money on one of the kids. I don't put it past them. You could beat your own mother. How can you not do something else? I mean, who? I can't get over this. So I keep like, who the hell puts their hands on their own mother? What type of man are you, Paul? What type of man was your father? You know, you watched your father do it, and then you stood in line. And when your father moved out, you continued beating on your mother. What type of man does that? A man in a dress, a cross-dressing. What type of, I'm sorry, not a man. What type of cross-dressing fool puts their hands on the same mother that brought them into this world? So what, Paul Jr.? If it was you, she brought you into this world, so you take her out of this world? Is that how it happened? I'm just curious. Because one of y'all, this DNA belongs to. One of y'all. You know? If the victim's own DNA was dominant profile and Eddie's wasn't the match, then whose male DNA was mixed in? That's the question the jury never got to ask because they never saw this report that we are looking at right now. They never got a chance to see this because Riley wanted to be crooked, corrupted, an evil little man.
You walk through the gates. Reality sets the stage. With every step, the walls whisper your name. You go to prison, they shackle your dreams, an echo in the dark, or so it seems. Fighting your case with nothing but truth, clenching your fists as you steady your proof. And then they hit you with words like stones. You show no remorse, they carve in your bones. You won't take responsibility, you're not ready. We paint with excuses, keep the truth unsteady. How you gonna take blame for a storm you didn't bring? Like blaming the man who's just caught in the swing. The system don't care about the path you tread, only about boxes and a story well read. A trapdoor's waiting on both sides of this game. Confess to a crime, dance in someone's shame. They're looking for confessions, not justice, not grace. Just a clean little narrative that fits in this space. 20 years in, then 25 more, still saying, I didn't do this, don't they just ignore? Instead of respect, they punish your fight, turning truth into chains, darkness swallowing light. How you gonna take blame for a storm you didn't bring? Like blaming the man who's just caught in the swing. The system don't care about the path you tread, only about boxes and a story well read. This ain't rehabilitation, it's a game they play, trading innocent souls for compliance each day. And here's the truth bared raw like a wound, real remorse for the guilty. That's the tune they croon. But innocent hearts beating inside those cells need their stories to shift away from these hells. Change the definitions, let compassion in, because real justice starts where the truth can begin. Your innocence should never serve as your chain. We hold on to hope, knowing change is our game.
I appreciate it. Welcome back. So yeah, so we're talking about the DNA, where was it? But if the victim's own DNA, right, was the dominant profile, right? If Janet's DNA was dominant, and then there was another male, and then Eddie was excluded. But that's the question the jury never got to ask, because they never saw this report. They never saw the report from Selma. And that's exactly it. Because people will scream, "Free Eddie," and then kiss Audie's ass. I don't understand that shit at all. Because here's a guy that said that wishes the worst for Eddie O'Brien. And people will kiss his ass. Oh, you got your new teeth, this and that. You got this, bop. What kind of shit is that? But you know what? This whole, oh, I gotta make that a little bigger. I can't stay that size. There it is. Okay. Because the chain of custody, when this comes in, right, the fingernails that were collected, they were labeled, they were stored, and they were shipped, right? But somewhere between, I don't know, the crime scene, the courtroom, the story ends up changing. And I think evidence that could have cleared Eddie O'Brien Jr., right, was treated like background noise. Because the state or the Commonwealth, they had the report. The lab had the data, but the jury, they didn't have nada. The jury didn't have anything. You know, what did the jury have? Nothing. The jury didn't get to see any of this. Investigate, investigate, investigate. You know, chain of custody. How important is that? Evidence that could have cleared a kid was not shown to the court. I mean, chain of custody isn't just paperwork, right? It's a lifeline, really. It's a lifeline of truth, you know? Evidence leaves a fingerprint on justice. And when those hands don't follow the rules, guys like Riley, when reports get filed after verdicts, like what kind of shit is that? What gets filed after a verdict? Something so important. And how come when it got to the feds didn't overturn this? The DNA gets buried under political bullshit. That's not procedure. That's sabotage right there. They sabotaged the O'Brien family. So we have to call it what it is, right? A broken chain, a missing link. I don't care what you want to call it, but it's deliberate science. They had a choice. Because if the fingernail evidence had been presented, if the jury had seen that the DNA didn't match, right? If the chain of custody had been transparent, this case could have ended a lot differently. And that's why the end of the month there will be a Rule 30 motion. And this one's going to matter. It's not just a motion, it's a chance so we can fix the link in that chain. It's a chance to put that missing piece back in the fence, to bring the truth back into the courtroom that it got buried in, to make sure that the hands that held the evidence finally handed over to justice, right? Because the truth was always there, but they didn't want you to see whose hand it was in. They didn't want you to see that. The DA didn't want to be exposed handling this information. They didn't want to be exposed. Now, we talked about the DNA, we talked about the fingernails, we talked about the bad juror, you know, we talked about the chain of custody that looked like a chain of confusion. Yeah. But now let's talk about the part that nobody has talked about, how the district attorney's office handled the lab communications. Oh yeah. I mean, this is where the story stops being sloppy and starts being strategic, right? Let's start with the obvious. Selmach didn't run these tests in secret, right? They didn't whisper the results into a void. They sent their findings directly to the Mass State Police Crime Lab, the same lab working hand in hand with the DA's office, the Michael Proctors of the world. And what did that juror, what did that July 25th report say? It said the DNA under Janet's fingernails came from what? More than one person. It said the primary source was a female. Okay. It said Eddie O'Brien was excluded as the primary contributor. Oh, great. Excluded. Oh, that's awesome. But what did the DA's office do with that information? Nothing. Not a friggin' whisper, not a peep, not a word, not a hint. Nothing. They told the jury nothing. That the science didn't match the story that they were selling. How can you live with yourself? And this is where the communication trail gets foggy, right? Because the lab did its job. The scientists typed the DNA, they documented the result, and they sent the report. But the district attorney's office, they act like the report never existed. When they seen it, they was like, oh, no, 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 no. No. This wasn't a missing comma. This ain't a typo. This was the fingernail evidence, right? The evidence prosecutors love to call that gold standard in violent crime cases. The evidence that shows who the victim fought with. The evidence that tells the story of the struggle. And the district attorney's office had a report saying Eddie was not the source, the primary source of that DNA. And they still stood in front of a jury and told them he was the killer. That's friggin' crazy. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. That's a choice. And the part that should make every listener stomach just drop. That report was dated July 25th, 1997. After the trial, after the verdict, after Eddie was already sentenced, after he was already in Walpole. So why was the DA's office still sending evidence out for testing after they already secured a conviction? Did we think of that one? Why did the lab results come in after the fact? Anybody have an answer to that? Why wasn't the testing done before the trial when it actually mattered? Because when you look, thank you, Ed. I appreciate that, man. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's just not justice, man. It just looks more like damage control to me. And that's why I think the Rule 30 is not just appropriate, it's necessary. And they better get their checkbook out along with it because you know what? Like, you got to pay. Because when a prosecution controls the flow of information, when they decide what the jury hears and what the jury never gets to see, that's not a fair trial. What's that word your boy loves to say? Curated. They curated a narrative. And Eddie O'Brien didn't lose his freedom because of the evidence. He lost it because the evidence that they hid, and now the truth is finally catching up. I mean, did you think how this could have changed the verdict? This would have changed the verdict. It absolutely would have had to change the verdict. If the jury had seen this evidence, how would the verdict have changed? I mean, this is where you take the science, the omission, the chain of custody, the failures, the DA's silence, right? And you show the people, you show the audience exactly how different the courtroom would have looked if the truth had been allowed in. And before Karen Reed, nobody talked about this shit. People know that it goes on. If they would just stop dancing around it and say it loud. If the jury had seen this DNA report, if they have heard the fingernail results, right? If they have known Eddie was excluded as the primary source of this DNA, this verdict would not look the same. And think about what the Commonwealth told the jury, right? They said Eddie stabbed Janet Downing in a violent struggle. They said Janet fought for her life. They said she scratched her attacker. Oh, great. But we'll just send it to Selmach, the lab that the state hires to figure this out. Oh, no problem. Eddie be coming home anytime now. Oh, wait a minute. No report. Where is it? And then you get the report. DNA from more than one person was obtained. It was from a female. Eddie O'Brien is excluded as the primary source. End of story. Now let me translate that for the dummies in the back. The DNA under her nails, the DNA from the struggle, did not match Eddie. That alone should create more than reasonable doubt. This is what forces a hung jury. This alone stops a conviction. But it doesn't stop there, right? Because if the jury had seen the DNA on the thread from that metal piece on the third stair that they said was the weapon, that also didn't match Eddie O'Brien Jr. And if they had seen the male DNA was a secondary contributor, not the primary attacker, if they have seen the victim's own DNA overwhelmed their sample, meaning the attacker's DNA was barely present, then the prosecution's theory just collapses. And if you talk about the chain of custody, oh boy. Talk about the chain of custody. When evidence moves through too many hands, when reports show up after the verdict, when the DA's office stays silent about the lab results, right, that contradict their story, I mean, that's just unconstitutional. Never mind sloppy. I mean, the defense could have got up, that horrible attorney, Bob George, he could have got up in front of that jury and said, ladies and gentlemen, the DNA under the victim's fingernails does not match Eddie O'Brien. The lab report proven this was withheld, and the Commonwealth knew it. The Commonwealth knew it. Very good. The DNA on the stairs don't match Eddie O'Brien. The lab report proved that that was withheld, and the Commonwealth knew it. And you think that jury convicts? No way. You think 12 people look at a 15-year-old boy and say guilty when the science says otherwise? No way. You think they ignore the reasonable doubt screaming from the evidence? No way that they could. They don't. They can't, because the law don't allow it. The evidence would have changed everything. It would have changed the deliberations, right? It would have changed the story, it would have changed that outcome. And that's why I think that a Rule 30, this isn't just a legal motion, man. It's the path back to the verdict Eddie should have gotten the first time around. Not guilty. Or at the very least, not proven, right? Because when the truth is hidden, the verdict's a lie. But now it's time that we have to correct it. All right, man. We'll be back with a few words. You know, we close it out. You know, so give me a few minutes. I'll be right back.
Hey, yo. They said Janet came home normal. I said, stop the cap, because the neighbor saw the whole scene. Her behavior wasn't regular. That timeline, nothing about it clean. People don't pull in, sit 5 minutes, pull back out, park again. Stand outside like they fighting thoughts deep within. Unless something heavy got under their skin. Oh, Commonwealth wanna pretend she was calm. Man, miss me with that. Michelle watched the whole routine glitch, like a mind buffering, trying to process a fact. She only brought in 2 bags, but the trunk was full. If everything normal, why she moving like she's stuck in a lull? Why leave the rest in the car? Why freeze up mid-task? Why step back out and smoke like she needed time to unmask? That ain't I just got home. There's something weighing on me. Guess my spirit ain't settled. That somebody or something been playing on me. She smoked the whole cigarette, not a drag, not a taste. The whole thing like she trying to calm a storm she ain't ready to face. But y'all wanna force Eddie into danger mode? Nah, the vibe ain't matching. She wasn't rushing inside, she wasn't scared of who y'all claim was attacking. She was outside at least 10 minutes, visibly upset, acting strange, moving different. And the prosecution tried to rearrange, like none of that mattered. But this opens the door to other interactions, other stressors, other people, other explanations. And that's exactly why they ignored it. Cause once you admit she was upset, you gotta admit the story ain't set. And the whole prosecution narrative start looking like a bad URL vet. All performance, no threat. I said the truth hit harder than any bar I could craft. And this timeline right here, yeah, it's the part where the Commonwealth get laughed off the map. on the evening show. They needed a monster for the 5 o'clock news. A 15-year-old boy they could easily use. They threw his clean clothes in a bloodstained car and locked up a peacemaker behind iron bars. They call him a predator to hide their own lies, but we see the truth when we look in his eyes. A loyal young soul, so gentle and polite. We're standing together to finish this fight. Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear. They hid all the palm prints, the DNA strands, put a lifetime of blame on a child's scarred hands. But the science is speaking, the silence is broke. We're tearing the fabric of the web that they spoke. He's grateful and compassionate, steady and true. An innocent man wearing prison cell blue. The system can bend, but it's breaking today. We won't stop shouting till he walks away. Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear. Tired of their stories, tired of the pain. We rise up together, we'll dance in the rain. He's our gentle giant, our shining star. We'll fight till the end, we'll carry him far. Unchain the gentle giant, let a good soul breathe. Free Eddie the Teddy, it's time he's released. Break down the courtroom walls, let the truth ring clear. Bring our selfless boy home in the 30-year tear. Will rise and we will find a way.
Alrighty then. How about that? All right, we back. Let me just switch this up a little. Hang on, people. We are back. We are back. Well, man, I appreciate everybody for joining me today. You know, we didn't just talk about, you know, a story. You know, what I brought you today was a cover-up. You know, just more on the Eddie O'Brien saga, because Eddie O'Brien is excluded as the primary source. DNA from more than one person. Evidence the jury never saw. Evidence the DA never mentioned. And this evidence could have changed everything. We exposed the fingernail DNA, We exposed a broken chain of custody, the silence from the DA's office. You know, now we're stepping into the part that they hope we'd never reach, right? The Rule 30, the part where the truth finally gets louder than the lies. Because if the jury had seen the real science, right? If the defense had put up a real defense, and if they had the real report, if the truth hadn't been buried under politics and ambition, then I think this verdict would have looked very, very different. Very different. I mean, this isn't the end. This is the beginning of the correction. You know, where does the case go from here? I mean, this is where this shit looks at you like dead in the face and look, where's this case go from here? I mean, we walked through the DNA that they hid. We walked through the fingernails, the chain of custody, you know, the mess that the DA's silenced, the missing fingerprints, the juror who never spoke up. Where does this case go from here? What happens next? What does justice look like after decades of injustice? Because this case is no longer about what happened in 1995. It's about what's going to happen in 2026. Because the evidence that we've uncovered, the reports that we've exposed, the misconduct that we showed you, right? None of that disappears just because time passed. The Rule 30 is on the table. It's powerful. And it's a reset button. If the system way of saying this shit wasn't fair and we fixed it. So where does this case go from here? Like I keep saying, it goes exactly where the truth leads, right? It goes to a hearing, motions, cross-examination that should have happened the first time. It goes to experts explaining the DNA the jury never saw. It goes to judges reviewing evidence that was buried under politics, buried under Riley's ambitions. Because if the courts do what the law requires, if the courts follow the science, if they follow the facts, if they follow that Constitution, then this case goes somewhere it should have gone decades ago. Back into the light. Because once you prove the evidence was withheld, once you prove the jury was misled, and once you prove, I think, that this investigation was compromised, then this verdict becomes a house built on sand. That's right. You started, you put cement on that foundation, and the Lord don't allow a conviction to stand on sand. So where does this case go? It goes forward. It goes upwards. It goes back into court. It goes into the hands of the people who can finally correct what was done to a 15-year-old boy. And make no mistakes, this isn't about simping. It's not about emotion, right? It's about law. It's about evidence. It's about the truth. And the truth is finally louder than Riley's lies. So where does the case go from here? Exactly where justice has been waiting for it. I thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. We're at 48 people. That's awesome. The truth needs to come out. Big shout out to everybody that held us down. Big shout out to Freebird showing up with the 50. Thank you. Really appreciated. Much needed. Shout out to everybody that came through today with any super chats that I might have missed, or I don't see any. So I think we're good over there. All right, people, we out of here, man. Thank you, and we'll definitely be back soon. So you already know we appreciate everybody that's gonna stand up for Eddie. And stop simping to Adi, man. If you're gonna be free Eddie, don't be kissing Adi's ass. You can't be, or we're just gonna start exposing you. Because there's people that bounce back and forth. You can't be simping for Adi and screaming free Eddie at the same time.
shell. Refuse to lie, they cast a wicked spell. No remorse in their eyes, they judge from the booth. But Eddie stands tall, anchored in truth. Summer is opening, the science is real. The manufactured box begins to peel. Voices collide as hope takes its stand. With every heartbeat echoes a drowning band. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. The drums roll thunder through the halls of despair. With strings and brass, they unite in the air. A symphony of chaos reflects in the night. The fight for Eddie grows bigger, takes flight. Beneath boundless skies, the walls start to shake. Each note of resistance, a wave in the wake. A revolution of honesty will cut through the lies. As the world turns its gaze, a new dawn will rise. So gather the voices who waited too long for Eddie O'Brien. We'll sing out strong. His freedom's a fire, lighting up the gloom. As the massive, triumphant chord brings truth to the room. Oh, now, hey. Now listen closely, I got a story to tell about a world that spun into a living hell. In the mid-90s, truth lost its place, while the system turned its back on the human race. Hey, all they cared about was filling up the beds. Didn't matter who they grabbed, just fill up the spread. They took the innocent kids, tossed them aside. Evidence was trash, it was a twisted ride. Bodies in the system, just numbers on a page. The system didn't care about the pain or the rage. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. Stand-up dudes taking the order they kept, left the neighborhood shattered, families wept. Addicts in the alleys, shadows of the past. We're stuck in the cycle, feeling outclassed. Why do the corners look like a zombie show? It's by design, we all know it, don't you know? It didn't happen by accident, it was all planned. The system made it happen, they had the upper hand. In the chaos in the night, there's a deeper truth. A kid named Eddie O'Brien, lost in his youth. 15 years strong, thrown in a ruthless game. A machine built to crush, no mercy, just shame. Politics and fear, the media spins their lies. Eddie stood no chance, neath the soulless skies. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. a fading light. He's a face of a struggle. He'll put up a fight. With the truth in his heart, he'll rise from the ground. Voices in the shadows, together we're found. So listen closely, the story ain't done. We're reclaiming our truth. We're taking back the sun. For every fallen brother, every shattered dream, we'll rise up together, united as a team.
Just a boy from Somerville, dreams held so tight, caught in the crossfire, lost in the night. They saw his size made him the face of the blame. In a game of politics, everything's just a name. When they opened the doors, fear ran through the halls, filling up those juvenile centers, hearing justice's calls. But to make it look balanced, a price had to be paid. Eddie was sacrificed and the cards were displayed. Oh, Eddie, just a boy caught in the game. With the pressure of a system, it's a crying shame. The weight of the world, it was heavy, was wrong. Just a boy from from Somerville, he never stood strong.